Thank you for joining for the second CoARA Spotlight of the June 2026 series. I have the pleasure to introduce Mathias Giraud, the CoARA Program Manager, who will kick us off. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Katrina. Yeah, thanks a lot to everyone who's coming here on a Friday afternoon, and we promise we have a very nice and light topic today. Yeah, we are going to talk about something that probably everyone encountered in the past months when he read a publication or attended a conference on virtually anything, which is AI. And of course, also AI is playing a role, which one we'll have to see in research assessment. And we want to talk about that a little bit further. We have with us today Matt Kohler. He is Associated Professor for Linguistics and Technology at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. And he is also a member of the CoARA-ERIP working group that produced several outputs, an essay, and also a white paper on ethical implications of AI integration and research assessment, and as well of a vision of, or basically like a AI-driven science future. So, well, without further words from my side, let's talk about ethical implications of AI integration. And Matt, floor is yours.
Thanks very much. And thanks to everybody who joined on this Friday afternoon. I'm mindful of the time and of the day of the week. I'll do my best to keep it engaging. I love this topic. I think it's really important, really fun, and it's a compelling issue that I think requires a sophisticated response that may involve some creativity. So in this talk, I'll mention a little bit about the work that I did a couple of years ago, reflect on what has changed in the meantime, and suggest maybe a path forward or different ways about thinking about this challenge in a way that I hope you'll agree is useful for CoARA. It's worth saying at the outset that the work I'll be citing is a co-authored paper written with my colleague, Dr. Van den Hooff, who sadly couldn't be here to co-present with me today. She did present the work in Canada a few months back, though, and any mistakes are entirely my own because I did take some liberties of augmenting it, mindful of the fact that you probably may have read, I hope, the text yourself, and perhaps are not eager to see somebody distill it again in different words. So I tried to make a nice distinction there for you. First, a bit about me. I've had a very nice introduction, so I won't belabor the point. Although I am not an ethicist, formally speaking, by academic appointment, I work in the tech sector. I do keep a big part of my profile aligned with ethics beyond CoARA. So I'm at Interspeech, which is the largest speech tech conference in the world. I serve as ethics chair there. Also for the ISCA, which is a language technology society, I serve as also chair of the ethics committee. And my own faculty, I'm the ethical chair. And I mentioned this not to impress you, but to also share a bit about my positionality. I'm coming here maybe from a more applied ethical perspective that's working very closely at the intersection of technology, academia, conference, university, and many other sectors as well. And my research is basically about speech and language. I look at where tech works, especially for small data and for small languages and for under-resourced communities. And that in itself is also highly aligned with ethics. But okay, I better not talk too much about research because you're more interested in what fits with CoARA. So the central research question that we try to answer is here, namely the ethical considerations, gaps, and opportunities in the literature on the integration of AI-assisted tools into research assessment. We wrote this a couple of years ago, and I think now to say it's a salient factor is an understatement, right? This is because something that's growing in importance and relevance, and I think we'll continue to do so. We wrote what we call a position essay. So this was not a systematic review for practical reasons. We did our best to include what we felt were the most salient sources, but in retrospect, I think there are some things that we overlooked, and I'll talk about them today. We also included curated literature from the CoARA-ERP working group, and we tried to employ an analytical focus. Where does that leave us now? I also want to mention that I'll be drawing on the white paper, but you're probably also familiar with that by Kiribati et al. The link for that, if you don't have it handy, is on the bottom of the screen in front of you right now. Okay, so why does this matter now? Well, assessment determines careers, funding, and more. You don't need me to tell that to you. It's being delegated now to tools which are opaque, gameable, in other words, hackable, unequally accurate across languages and institutions. So it's a very problematic situation in which we find ourselves. And this is not some typical academic reflective essay on what would happen if. This is happening now, right? 23,000 papers just recently were reviewed by AI at the AAAI 2026 conference. It's one example of like the scale of things that we're aware of in one event, right? At the same time, as you probably know, EU AI Act Article 4 enforcement begins this summer. Buckle up. And Article 4 AI literacy obligations have been binding since February. However, very little evidence of that bind requirement is evident, at least to me, in my review of the state of the art right now. Keep in mind, this conference I just mentioned is the first time a major conference officially ran AI-generated reviews at full scale. And I think for that reason, it's worth actually looking into that a little bit. We see these stats sometimes, or maybe you even heard about this before, but in the age of AI, in the age of the intersection between the enormous economic and practical advantages that AI brings us, there's a lot of hype, right? So it's worth actually just looking at what happened to kind of frame maybe some of the claims in this discussion through exemplification. So here's the conference, a website I looked up just today. They note very transparently our AI-assisted reviewing experiment shows promising early results, including tools to detect and counteract collusion among reviewers. And they promised to share a detailed report, and they did, to their credit. A detailed report that you too can read on arXiv, written with lead author Biswas, who I cite quite a lot. It's an interesting paper, and there's some quality science behind it. As background, the review system had 5 stages, and I did not name them, but nonetheless, I'll read them to you. So-called story, presentation, evaluations, correctness, and significance. And each stage is designed to catch one type of problem of the same name, right? So just as a background, the story stage catches problems relating to stories. The correctness stage catches problems related to correctness. So with that in mind, you can see how it works here. Here's a nice summary from that same paper. And if you look at the green bar on the right, you can see that it looks like the system knows what it's looking for, but I call it the heat map on the left is problematic, even though they're very proud of it. And I'm not here to rain on their parade. It's interesting what the results show, but they take a really positive framing towards something that I think we in this meeting can be suspicious of. So look at that heat map, if you will, remembering that the rows are types of errors, along the same ones I just told you about, that were injected into papers as a part of study, and the columns are review stages. And the idea being is if you look at the diagonal, a 1.0 would show perfect score, right? So everything's working as intended. And of course, in the real world, that you never get 1 all the way down. But ideally, what you're looking for is 1 in every diagonal and 0 everywhere else, right? So just for an example, the story phase catches story problems in 67% of the time. Is that enough? I don't know. I have no idea what story problems are. But I do know significance, right? So there's a wildly different number down there at the bottom that shows us that it's not the results might not be as kind of sunny as we might like, even though there's a very strong tendency down the diagonal. 53% detection rate for significance errors is questionable, right? It's good, but is this something to suggest widespread adoption on the scale that we're talking about right now? The correctness errors are almost 70%, but significance errors almost half. This kind of, to me anyway, and I wonder how you feel about it, and if you'd like to speak, I encourage you to unmute yourself and just say it. To me, this is not entirely surprising, right? The significance is not a technical criterion. the question of whether the work is worth advancing or not, right? That's what the significance means here. And this is exactly the sort of thing that language models and AI, we wonder if it's good enough at, and I would say at 53%, probably not. I also think that it's worth saying, at least for now, this is not a gap that some fine tuning will just solve. There's a mismatch here. And this was the mismatch that our essay, the one that I'm going to be speaking about presently, tries to examine. But of course, the study came out, this work came out after the essay, right? So I wanted to offer this as more context of why the essay is still relevant a couple years later, but at least in some respects. So here's the essay in a single slide. We started with that one core question that I shared with you earlier. We identified, conveniently enough, 2 ethical themes, 3 gaps, and 4 opportunities, which makes for a very nice and neat presentation grid that you have in front of you now. In this talk, I will go through each of the outcomes to the one question and walk you through what we showed and what new advances also kind of indicate. So let's start with the 2 ethical themes, transparency and privacy and data security. So these 2 themes reoccurred across every empirical study that we found. As for transparency, around half of researchers in 2024 reported minimal familiarity with AI tools. That should, I hope, concern us. As for privacy and data security, we see that researcher anxiety about data privacy is one of the top concerns. And there's a lot to say about these things. In fact, I can make a presentation just about these 2 themes. But I wanted to dive in on one of them, which is a very hot topic in my field, especially in speech technology, connecting to algorithmic and dataset bias, and some news around there. So what we see is a kind of impact that's borne more heavily on the global south, if you allow the term. Here's an example in ICLR, where 80,000 reviews were analyzed. According to a study by Lepp and Smith in 2025, after the models redefined standard academic writing, reviewers use perceived deviation from that as a proxy to demographic factors. So this further disadvantages authors from non-English speaking countries, exasperating already a problematic bias. We also found, or Liang et al., 2023, also found false positive AI detection rate for non-natives 61% versus 5% for US student essays. That's tremendous, right? So there's a real language bias that isn't just about, when does the model work best and for whom, also important, by the way, but who does it privilege, right? And what are the impacts of that in a very competitive landscape of academia? I'm sure that this is not a revelation to you. You're probably dimly aware of it, or maybe even sharply aware of it. But I think these numbers bring the issue that I just raised, one of the 2 main ethical issues, into sharp relief for you. AI and research assessment is more than just conference review, right? So of course, grant applications, grant scoring, hiring, and promotion. And originally I made these slides and I thought, oh, I could share a lot with you, but then the practicality of reading this aloud to you is daunting. So I made some nice summaries. Applications surged across 12 major funders since AI tools became available. This is particularly true for a study I read about the Welcome UK applications, which just skyrocketed. AI tools become available, then many responses from the funders is to ban AI use, but those bans are, of course, not entirely enforceable or entirely unenforceable. There's a real need for funders to act right away. At the same time, the models correlate weakly with expert scores and miss clarity flaws almost entirely. They check compliance, that's for sure, but they don't, again, I'm telling you something you already know probably, they don't exercise any meaningful judgment. Alarmingly, almost all managers using AI apply it to personnel decisions. More than 1 in 5 in the study that I cite let it make final decisions without human input. This is formally a high-risk activity, right, according to EU. Conference peer review is where the evidence base is the strongest, but these examples I just gave you around, for example, grant evaluation, hiring, promotion, and so on, are where AI deployment meet the CoARA reform agenda very, very head-on. Governance is just simply speaking, just not keeping pace. So we discussed some ethical themes. I want to move on to the gaps right now. We found 3 gaps, but it's worth looking at what we learned since the publication of the paper. We learned that methodological gap is comparatively more closed than is, but it's closed in ways we didn't really expect, right? So on the left, sanction deployment, what we see is first conference-wide deployment accepted papers that despite known flaws. So I gave the example at the outset of this talk about the AAAI conference, and they tout the use of language models as a success in a very nice paper, which, to be fair, they published open access and available for all. At the same time, it does show less shiny results than they seem to indicate. The review quality improved, but scores are gameable. On that note, the study by Bauman et al. In 2026 just came out on ICML, another conference, to be fair, showed that about 25 US cents is the cost of automatic rewriting that boost AI review scores by half a point, but that's not nothing without changing the science behind them, right? So there's a way. This is the game. This gamifiable. It's hackable. Some of these approaches. On the other hand, AI is being used covertly without authorization. That's for sure. There's lots of work that shows this at a scale that almost completely undermines the integrity of the research process. I work on a lot of journals. I'm also involved, as I mentioned before, in many very large conferences, and our own internal audits, which I'm not privileged to share, indicate an alarming over-reliance on large language models in the review process. It's very hard to stop this. You know it as well as I do. And it's not a matter of just simply accepting it. Simply put, deployment is outrunning governance, right? That's what we see is in one sentence. And at the same time, as you know, the regulatory timeline is already happening, right? So the concerns identified in our essay then by now have legal force. And I think that most institutions are unprepared for those, as far as I see. The Article 4 of the EU AI Act establishes literacy obligations. As I mentioned at the outset, they've been legally binding since February 2025. And maybe I'm too pessimistic or naive or something like that. But as far as I could find, there was not evidence of major institutions having any kind of systematic compliance with that. I think enforcement will begin very soon over the summer for EU institutions. And I'm very curious about the implications thereof. NX3 for high risk AI, I believe, is now has an enforcement deadline recently changed, if I'm not mistaken, until December. So education and employment are considered high risk categories. So grant scoring, hiring, promotion tools plausibly fall within the scope of, I said plausibly very strategically because it depends a little bit on some externalities. But what's clear from the literature that I reviewed, and of course, maybe the case for some companies where this could be proprietary, but at least for public institutions where I can find information, they are not prepared for this, right? They're prepared legally, perhaps by hiring lawyers or by having a nice team that calls itself a compliance team. But what they have in place for it is not adequate tool set to meet this. So voluntary adoption is failing. As I mentioned this implicitly a couple of times, and I even spoke about it explicitly to some others. So in one study from 2023, 17 of 147 researchers completed the one ethics training course that measured completion. There's not much more data about this I can find, so but I think that speaks for itself. Sorry, because there's too many pop-ups from now I don't have to see myself while I'm talking. Voluntary approaches are failing. Legal obligations exist, but compliance is undocumented. There are exceptions, though, right? And I think some people here will be pleased to even know of an exception. It's worth mentioning La Caixa Foundation, which looks to me, according again to my research, and I think there's an expert here who can correct me if I'm wrong here. Looks like a great example of responsible deployment. I promise we did not collude previously. Because actually I learned about La Caixa during the preparation of this presentation. So for their Caixa Research Health, AI is involved with pre-screening before peer review, but the output provided by the AI is recommendation only. Then humans confirm eligibility for every proposal flagged by AI. And if there's reasonable doubt, the proposal is quote unquote rescued. No personally identifiable information is used. The bias study is conducted before deployment, and explainability is built in, right? This is, I think, a really important development, because it shows that responsible deployment, contrary to kind of the depressing examples that were very easy to find online, but responsible deployment is in fact possible. It has a scoped role, so AI flags, but humans decide. So not just humans in the loop, but humans really driving. The algorithm itself produces just a recommendation, not a decision, and there's full discretion by human beings. Two eligibility reviewers to assess every proposal that's been flagged. If either has doubt, it's rescued. And then, interestingly, from what I understand, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, it is not possible to contest removal once ratified, and reviewers have an incentive to accept the algorithm's recommendation. So the process is not so appealable, but at the same time, that's perhaps understandable. I learned about this through a nice study that you can find yourself, freely available, open access online, AI-assisted pre-screening of biomedical research proposals. There's a very nice walkthrough image and figure, I think it's figure 1 here, where it explains on a pretty large scale with 546 eligible submissions, how AI pre-rejected 116 of those. And the human experts looked at those pre-rejections, rescued 30, and added them to the eligibles, and then humans took care of the rest, right? So that was a very nice, I think, defensible counterexample to what we've been, the concerns I've been raising earlier. The gaps mentioned in that paper, there were 3, if you recall, a methodological one, implementation one, and policy one. I said that some of them are closing. That's first and the last. So the methodological gap is partially closing, I say, because large-scale pilots run by conferences like the ones we talked about, however, not by ethics researchers like you. The review reduces diversity and it's gameable. There's some paper laundering. And I think there's an open question on its effect on what research gets published or funded or admitted or whatever. On the policy, again, the last block there, the EU AI sets a legal minimum, but no institution has specified what compliance looks like for any of those categories, like grant scoring, hiring, or promotion. So that's narrowing, but some needs to be more work needs to go there. And implementation is still wide open, right? So there's no evidence that I could see that voluntary ethics training in our field reaches the people it targets or changes their behavior in any way. There's just no reporting on this. That's very concerning. I want to move on to the opportunities because our paper, if nothing else, was optimistic. We found 3 gaps, and each gap connects to an opportunity with one overarching opportunity, like so. The methodological gap connects to evidence building opportunities. The policy gap connects to coordination opportunities. The implementation gap connects to tool development opportunities. And then there's an overarching opportunity called training innovation. So some kind of critical judgment. Let's look at how this looks maybe more visually. So the methodological gap around limited empirical studies and the lack of standardized evaluation methods connects to an opportunity around pilots and collaborative case study collections to build the empirical base that the field needs. And I'll say more about that shortly, about how this could be leveraged by CoARA maybe and by others to make substantive changes. The gap in implementation where principles don't reach practice and there's limited voluntary adoption. Again, there's an opportunity for some tool development. Maybe checklist, I think, is kind of underselling the idea. I'll also speak about that at the end, a practical solution. Policy gap is evident with poor coordinated standards, some soft law, and I think we can coordinate and think together about best practices across institutions through international coalitions and so on, much like this one. And the cross-cutting opportunity is about training innovation. I mentioned now many times about the low completion rates or lack of data for voluntary ethics training. I think we need a new approach to this, a way to build kind of critical judgment beyond this technical test, right? We need a kind of cross-cutting approach that responds to those 3 gaps that can be used by different institutions. And I'll get specific about that. I know it sounds vague right now, but bear with me. In our paper, we also talked about that translating these findings into obligations for each actor. So for researchers or universities, let's say, and academic institutions, having interdisciplinary AI ethics review boards, explainability and audit trail requirements, mandatory staff training on use and limits for funding bodies, the equivalent of transparency and bias mitigation, funding for ethically designed open tools, and living guidelines that evolve with the technology. And for AI dev, explainability built in, that's wishful, right? Privacy by design and standardized audit trails. We speak more about that in the essay, but since it's kind of already elaborated a bit there, I wanted to present something new based on the newer work that I included in this presentation for conference organizers. For example, disclosure policies, test and publishing benchmark results before deployment, contrary to what's been done now, and the avoidance of policies that cannot be enforced. So giving some examples of each, ICLR 2026 mandated disclosure. Nonetheless, 21% of reviews were AI generated anyway. People do not disclose, right? That also connects to the last bullet there. AAAI 26 ran its first, as you know, full conference scale with 23,000 papers, but they did not run a smaller scale pilot before that, did they? They just did it all at once, ambitiously. And the policy issue, ICML, but many other chairs for many other conferences say things like the privacy compliant carve-out is not realistically enforceable. If they don't say it, they know it, right? So there are policies that we can write ambitiously, but cannot be enforced in any way. There's a response from the CoARA-ERIP. Maybe you're aware of the Kirbus et al. White paper. If not, you should check it out. It's an excellent resource. They provide 3 tools available now and some in development. So the ones available now include training modules for ethical assessment, a tool that institutions can configure to assess, to configure how they assess research, which is apparently adaptable, and a matrix for checking if practices are aligned with ethical principles, and that's been prototyped. Another, which is a new boost project funded by the EU with a position paper framing RA as the 3rd pillar alongside ethics and integrity. Last I heard, that's in progress. And then some more that are in development, which you can read about there, including some pilots and integration and moving from prototypes to minimal viable product, etc. While we wait for those, though, and I'm not the kind of person, and I suppose you're not either, who intends to sit around waiting for others to solve it for us. So we are can-do, hands-on people here, I expect. We can think about what's happening before August and prepare, right? Most institutions deploying AI promotion and peer review promotion or grant eval have no audit trail. This has to be corrected. So if you work for such an institution, I would advise, with all respect, to look at getting their ducks in a row, as we say, and prepping for an audit. I think it's very smart as a community that we find a platform that we can share our failures and successes together in. It's happening a lot. Many institutions are experimenting in different ways. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. There's no mechanism to share them. I think that's also an interesting place that CoARA can think of entering. I'll get to that too shortly. And to train for judgment, right? So the point being that I think a lot of focus at many institutions that are in my network, so I'm a bit biased because I only know what I know from who I spoke with, and that's my own network, that the focus is often on whether the staff is now authorized to use tools because they've done a certain training, but that's not enough, maybe. I think we need to figure out when the tool is, we need to help people figure out when the tool is not reliable or when it's being manipulated or gamed, and support people in acquiring judgment skills. I think that at the same time, so that's advice for that we can take on individually, but individual action, I would say, is necessary but not sufficient for the challenge ahead. I have some relatively, I think, broad ideas, and I wanted to share them to get your impressions. They're wild and a little bit uncultivated ideas that are kind of just percolating on my mind. And I would like to share them with you in the spirit of academic openness, but not as finished products already refined and ready for deployment, right? I would say that the field needs more infrastructure and maybe not many more papers. I'm guilty of writing one such paper, But I don't believe that the solution to this is more position papers. I looked at how other industries managed these kinds of challenges. Aviation industry built huge databases to study aviation disasters. But by the way, as I'll show you soon enough, AI did the same. RA has no equivalent, right? Maybe that's something we can put our heads together and contribute to as CoARA. And I would also like to share with you a bold statement that no AI tool should be deployed in RA without passing eval criteria. Conditions are knowable because we have a lot of evidence of what works and what doesn't. I'm not saying that the La Caixa approach is perfect, but nonetheless, these kinds of conditions and other examples from published studies that give us some insight there. We can develop a shared instrument that can really be used by others. Let's talk a little bit more about the first one, though. I mentioned about the aviation crashes, but now I want to talk about the AI incident database. There's 1,200 cases, not many, by the way, but the tool exists and is very interesting. It's worth looking at. Here is a quick screen grab from it. This is the AI incident database homepage. You can submit an incident report. So you can submit full or partial reports, and they're automatically, or you can tag them and filter them in different ways so that they're categorized appropriately. And then they can be searched and discovered and discussed and cross-referenced in this database. So here, I've queried the ones that are most recent, and you can see for yourself. There's different sorts of incidents here. I think submitted by all kinds of different people of different backgrounds. There's even a leaderboard to, I don't know why, to encourage people to submit more of these. Nonetheless, I think that's kind of compelling. What if CoARA initiated a registry like that? What different institutions tried, what failed, under what conditions, and try to extrapolate from that, at least minimally, a dialogue about what's going on. Hopefully some idea about what works and what doesn't work and when, and maybe build more awareness that we're in this together, right? Things are not going to be the same as they were before these tools became available. And those who bury their heads and hope that we just wait for an AI detector or something else, or enough tools or checklists, I think is a fool's errand. If we want to have a world where large language models and other kinds of AI affect our lives in transparent ways that we value, and not one where it is opaque and helping people who need help the least and disincentivizing those who could use the most support, then it's worthwhile to think, I think, in terms of a domain-specific registry, similar to the AI incident database. And this is not like high-tech stuff, right? This is relatively easy to build, I think. The other idea I had was this one, and I think it's about having a shared instrument. I wanted to think aloud about what that might look like. And I was informed or inspired by La Caixa. I guess it's no surprise to you. Starting off with the scoped role, so AI offering recommendations only, testing it against bias, so to deal with the language issue that I mentioned a couple of times now, maybe having some pilot studies before going live, having it explainable so that when something is flagged or demoted or otherwise called out by the algorithm, that the relevant people can see why and can check if it's true. It's appealable, so applicants can contest before any decision is final, and that it cannot be gamed, right? So that people with better models or who are using whatever comes after Anthropic's Mythos and whatever comes next, cannot just rewrite their way into acceptance or promotion or whatever. A reflection for you before you leave this call is I invite you to think about which AI systems we in our institutions are using in research assessment, if any, and have any of them been assessed against those criteria, right? It's tempting to do it right now with you, but I encourage you to do it on your own. If the answer is no, I think that that's a good place to begin a discussion around reform and usage. And again, I know this comes across a bit arrogant, as if I've already decided this is the best way to do it. My intention here is not to come across that way at all, but to come across by sharing an intention for action, of tangible change now before the system gets too entrenched, which it will in the years ahead if there's no response, and peer review academic scientific processes are permanently altered in a way that there's no coming back from. That's it. I kept it short and sweet. I'm happy to discuss. I would like to discuss, not as a monolithic conversation where you pepper me with questions, although I'm open to that, but where maybe we discuss together and have a conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Matt. As promised, easy food for a Friday afternoon. So we are now starting the Q&A session. Please, I just wanted to disclaim, or in full transparency, we are recording this meeting. So I would say, please, if you have a question, switch on your camera and also state who you are. Except if you don't want to do that, you can also leave the camera off and maybe also delete your name. But otherwise, just that you know that it's recorded and will be also published on our YouTube channels. Okay.
Also, if you want me to turn my camera off because it's too annoying and distracting, also you may ask me.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the offer. No, let's start. Any questions?
Okay, let me make it easier. What do you think about the two suggestions or the stances? Is this something feasible or interesting, or is it a pipe dream, naive?
Patricia.
Patricia. Yeah.
So a couple things. I really like the idea of having some sort of repository for instances around and either instances, case studies, or initiatives around that, rather than just sort of a think tank. Because, oh my gosh, in all of my various venues, people are pulling together committees to talk about exactly the same darn thing.
Yes, I know. No.
And my concern is that if we focus on building tools, as a former systems person, I got over it, but people get very fixated on either building it so it's 100% inclusive with all of the edge case studies, or totally fixated on exactly what they need for their particular environment. And go narrow means it's not expandable. Go broad means it never comes to fruition. And I think one of the things that we need to look at is, can it be modular? Can it be tweaked for the individual settings? So what is the assessment in humanities looks very different from what is the assessment in STEM. And having worked in international contexts, what's being assessed in Italy and the way that that's being interpreted is very different from what's being assessed in Canada or Africa or, Indonesia. So yes. How can I help but with those frames?
Yeah, we want to be mindful not to impose like another kind of problem that's belonging to a different category of problems on an already very complex problem. And I think that your advice is very prudent of making sure it's modular. I like how you put that very much. That the modularity of any solution that reflects maybe different sectors, different nationalities, different legal frameworks, and different ethical frameworks that can vary tremendously across all kinds of other variables is critical. And to do that in such a way that you don't get lost in some sort of taxonomic exercise will be a nice challenge. But it seems to be an achievable challenge.
Any other question? But otherwise, I had one as well, but do we really need one system? What was talked about was as if we are basically developing one LLM or one system that can be modularly applied to different research contexts and national contexts or cultural contexts. But should it not more that there is basically like some kind of, every car has certain security standards, otherwise it cannot enter the streets in Europe. So could that be a way that we basically see like, look, okay, there are some security standards, otherwise funding agencies are actually not even allowed to use it.
And by the way, I was never advocating for one LLM. I have no position on that. And I think that the question is basically about how modular any sort of database system or advice that comes out of that system would be. And I think it should be a highly modular. And I think that you're right in the sense, but we also don't want like many competing outputs that do something similar but a bit different. Like, yeah, I'm not honestly, I'm not sure. I'm curious what other people think. But meantime, I see Joost has a hand raised.
Go ahead.
Or Carla too.
Are you? Okay. Hi.
Yes, hi. Well, first of all, Matt, thanks for your kind words in our processes. Happy to hear this paper is still moving some things around. I just wanted to share a couple of comments on that, and part of that you've explained it, and some ideas that for us have been really important. I mean, we have quite a bunch of AI assisted, and that word is really important, processes now in place in our research assessment pipelines. When we started like 9 years ago, we were the crazy ones, and now this is a hot topic. But one of for me are really important a few ideas. One is human process is not perfect.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for a AI perfect process. I'm looking to improve the process we already have, and we've proved that. Having a matching tool to match best reviewers with the proposals, I couldn't do that manually at all. I mean, I have 3,000 evaluations. I have 800 proposals or more, and I have to match 3 reviewers or 4 per proposal with a really huge dimensionality problem, a really specific expertise. How can I do that manually? So having an automatic process there, it does the work much better than that I could even do it myself, or with a team of 100, I mean, 10 people doing that for a month. We give feedback in all our processes, in our evaluation phases. That's really important for us. And we read them one by one. We used to read them one by one to see if there was any mistake associated to that. We are human as well. I can miss a mistake. And giving a report with those mistakes, that's not good at all. Having AI helping us on that, having detected the typical mistakes that we've seen in the last 8 years, and having an AI flagging those mistakes and then going straight to check that is really useful for us. And that makes our work easier and our outcomes better. This screening process you were mentioning, that spoiler, we are completely changing the approach on that, because AI in every phase right now makes that training algorithms with AI is not possible anymore, because actual data is different from 2 years ago data. And that changed the context completely. So we are completely changing that approach right now. And I would say that one of the dark points on that process that for me was really important, and we were looking how to fix that or how to improve that was explainability. Now is part of the process itself. So hopefully soon we can do another paper on that and share. I mean, spread the knowledge. We are happy, and I'm doing talks around everywhere, sharing the things we've done and how we do it, because at the end is better for the process itself, and for being able to select the best proposals at the end. That's what we do. But again, it's really important. And as you said, we've never moved forward with any process if it was not solid enough, if results were not good enough. And we have to be open and transparent completely in what we do, how we do it, why we do it. It's published everywhere, rules for participation, even more detail in the eligibility guidelines or evaluation guidelines. So be open on that because, as you said, this is here. It's not going anywhere. So we cannot fight it. Why should we fight it? Applicants are using AI, reviewers are using AI, we are using AI. We cannot fight it. So adapt and don't be reactive. We just saw what happened with being really restrictive with some ideas and then having to go backwards. So just think what's going on and don't be reactive on what's going on. Just try to make decisions based in evidence, and that's discussing this together and sharing knowledge. That's really, really, really important. And thank you. Being able to share this and discuss, and it's always interesting and learning important.
Very much, Carla. Are there any other questions or things that you would like to discuss or bring up, or case studies, or also evidence that contradicts anything of what has been said here? So please. So just one question also from me to Carla. So basically, but you have the feeling that basically the use of AI is actually helping and making the process easier or more smoothly, or get some time, because sometimes one has also the feeling, I heard on a conference recently that someone said, like, with all the ethics checks and so on and so forth, basically it's not less work, it's just different work. So basically, like, we don't read the proposals ourselves anymore, but we are evaluating what the AI is basically giving us, or we don't check the compliance, but we are checking it. So that would be also interesting to understand.
I have no doubt that in our experience and in our processes, AI is making it better. As not only in the example I was telling you before about the matching process, I think that's a clear example, but also on the reports checking process or any process itself in this sense. I mean, at the end, we are making the decisions. So AI, it's not making the decisions for us. AI, it's helping us get to the good decisions, I would say faster or better or missing less, but it's not only on our path. So last year or a couple of years ago, we started to think, okay, we've built several processes that made our life or our demand management a bit easier. How can I also use that with the different external users? So the applicant I mean, as you were saying before, there's several papers out there where it says that using AI to write proposals is probably making the process more democratic. Everything's done in English. I'm happy with that, but it's not my first language. It's not the first language from a big part of the world. So AI helping on that makes, for me, the process more democratic. We made and we built and we have in our online system a writing assistant. I'm sure and I know that for Spanish-speaking people, having AI making better your text after you've already wrote the proposal, so that's the right line. We are not generating content at all, obviously, but once the proposal is written, you can use our tool so it's improved in a text or English or writing point of view. Why shouldn't that be good? I mean, I'm trying to select the best research, not the best written proposal. So at that end, we're helping the applicants on that. We're helping the reviewers themselves when they submit the reports. They obviously can make mistakes. They don't do that on purpose. When you have to contact them a few months later, I've read your report and I have doubts on your answer here. Could be that a mistake? They feel sorry about that and they have to review that. Now, when they apply and submit their evaluation, if there's a possible mistake on the report, they get a warning. They can ignore that, obviously. You've got the will of what you do, but they get a warning. So that's useful for them, and they can fix that immediately at that point while they're doing the work. So those are examples that these tools are useful for your day-to-day work. from our side, from the external user side. Obviously, AI cannot do everything, and AI cannot decide for us, but it can help us make better decisions or be more informed. I cannot read everything's out there. It's impossible, but I can get some summary on that. So it's a difficult balance, and obviously, as Matt was saying before, really, the main thing here is not trying to use AI now for everything and for doing our job, but in the ethical and best way possible. At the end, it's my responsibility. So what I do, it's my responsibility. It's not AI's. I mean, we have a disclosure in our rules of participation saying to the applicants, it's on you if you wanted to use AI. It wouldn't be coherent if I ban AI when I'm using AI. But every comma that you add on the application, it's on you. It's on you. I don't care if it was done with AI. I don't care if there's anything wrong behind that. But it's on you. It's not on AI. So you are responsible of what you submit if you're an applicant, if you're a reviewer, or if in our side, when we make our final selection decisions. That's the difference. Well use of a knife for cut a potato, not for killing someone. It's the same.
Thank you for the interesting insights. Any other questions?
I found that very inspiring, by the way, and I think it's worth it's a great way to kind of wrap up the discussion in some respect. I also wanted to share kind of what you were just pointing to, that there's a lot of gray area in between where AI is being used really productively, and I hope I didn't come across as being too negative. Just on my own experience, I was in a conference recently, reviewing for a conference, and they asked for my review, and they said, "Listen," they said it in a very formal way, but essentially, I know it's tempting to use AI to produce your review. We are including with every submission an AI generated review that we have credits for. We're going to do it with whatever, ChatGPT or something. So with that in mind, you can be sure that things that a model will pick up will be picked up already. We're choosing you for the review because we respect your expertise. And they made a very minimal review template. So you didn't feel compelled to write 5-page or 10-page review, but fill out a Google form where you rated it according to some criteria and justified your ratings. And I have to say, it made my review process much faster because I wasn't checking, oh, is every single article referenced in the text actually cited in the bibliography? And are these citations correct or existing and so on? And kind of offloading that boring part of the review process to an algorithm that I hope I can trust. But those were my instructions as a participant in this conference committee. Was a unique experience that I found highlighted some of the positive aspects we just heard about from Carla about how AI can really alleviate the burden on experts and allow us to exercise what we're best at and leave the rest to a faceless algorithm.
Hey, we have about 5 minutes left, so time for the last 1 or 2 questions. And if not, I think everybody is also happy to start the weekend probably as well. Good. So if there is nothing else anymore, thank you very much, Matt. Thank you very much also for all the people with the questions. Thanks, Carla, for giving us some insights into La Caixa. And thanks to all of you and to the Secretariat as well to set it all up. And well, I guess AI will be a topic for the future and also for CoARA. So this is probably not the last time that we will have an event or a spotlight on on the different facets of AI. Have a nice weekend, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Send an email anytime with any questions.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.